Understanding power requires more than headlines. I'm Peter Hamby, host of The Powers That Be, a podcast from Puck examining politics, economics, and media to provide context, analysis, and clarity without sensationalism. We ask how power operates, who benefits, and what's at stake. If you want to move beyond breaking news to deeper understanding, join us on The Powers That Be. New episodes every weekday. Follow The Powers That Be wherever you get your podcasts.
You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Money Talk with Tiff. I'm Tiffany Grant, and today I have Brianna Franklin on the line. Now, Bree, we kind of go way back. We met at FinCon back in 2023, and then I appeared on her YouTube series, Undefeated. But since then, she's pivoted from media to curriculum. So, hey Bree, how are you?
Hello. It is great to be here in the guest seat, flipping it around, as we said. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And it's a long time coming.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you went from media to curriculum. So what changed in that time from 2023 to now? And then why did you move from talking about, mainly debt to now preventing it in high schools?
Yeah. So I would say my philosophy has always been to be very intuition driven. So connection and faith to a higher power, for sure, was kind of what caused the shift. I'm trying to be fancy with how I'm describing it. But from 2023, when I first started Undefeated, it was in its media form. And that was a way to just basically amplify and give voice to stories of those who had also shared in the suffering of being harmed by predatory lending, student loans specifically, but also other kinds of debt. And as 2024 came underway, we saw just like the stark shift and drop off in our donors, right? And the people that were funding the work and allowing for that particular direction to keep moving forward. It was just very clear to me by about early to midway through that year of, okay, we probably are going to have to start transitioning and going in a different direction. So that was when I pulled the plug. August 2024 is when the Prosperity Project, which was the NGO I started that Undefeated was the marketing arm for, had officially been dissolved. And then last year, 2025, was the gap year where I was able to take a step back from the work altogether and then reassess, retool some things, and then land on ultimately how to revive it through this new medium. So to speak more concretely to the question of the shift, prevention, as they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And even though that's typically spoken in a medical sense, I think it applies financially as well. And where we're talking about setting young people up for success, the formula we've seen play out for generations, just thrusting them into all kinds of sharky, predatory financial waters. And then just, you better hope and pray that you come out in good shape. Like that just doesn't work well for anyone. So higher versus higher is now, leading the way with continuing where, TPP left off. And Undefeated has actually been rebranded as sort of like the conglomerate as a social enterprise that higher versus higher lives under.
Gotcha. And yeah, when I was doing my research, I was like, okay, higher versus higher. She's talking to high school students. And I noticed that your opening module is financial trauma. Now, this is something that I talk about with adults who are rebuilding. But what does financial trauma look like in a 17-year-old who hasn't even had a credit card yet?
Yes. So I'm learning all new layers to this topic. I myself am going through the Trauma of Money Institute. At the end of this month, I'll be getting certified, woot woot. And it's just totally reimagined my outlook on life. I thought it was going to be squarely like in the business and professional realm, but it's changed how I interact with family and friends, which is awesome too. But in terms of how that work, is able to successfully take flight, with these topics that high schoolers typically haven't had to deal with in the same way, it doesn't mean that they haven't been at least exposed to it. So really, like, we're meeting them where they are in terms of what's age appropriate and life stage appropriate. And basically, through the curriculum, causing them to just listen, right? Like more carefully to conversations that they hear in the household. Like, what behaviors do you observe your parents, your guardians, your caretakers, exhibit when it comes to money. Like when you have to ask for funding for a field trip, if the family is cash strapped, is it a conversation of, well, we don't have the means right now, but we'll see what we can do? Or is it just an automatic non-starter of like, where do you think we're going to get the money from? It doesn't grow on trees. So just really, causing kids to check in with the thoughts that they've been having, but also the conversations and those money scripts that have been playing out around them since childhood that they just didn't know to really put their finger on and examine as a possible indicator of financial trauma in the family.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Because when I saw that, I was like, with teenagers, first of all, they don't want to be bothered.
Right.
and then second of all, they're probably like, what the heck are these adults talking about? So that's why I thought it was just very interesting. And so with the higher versus higher framework, what does that look like when it comes to these high school students?
Yeah, so HVH, or the higher in high versus higher as the 4-letter acronym stands for honor your skills and abilities, identify avenues for impact, research monetization methods, and evaluate ROI. So it's pretty much a simple equation for reverse engineering the what comes after graduation conversation. Just again, in taking stock of where we are culturally, how there's been so many shifts where especially that was accelerated through COVID, how traditional 4-year degrees, I definitely would never say that those have like become obsolete. Like there are certainly professions where that's non-negotiable and that it will have, a high ROI for the student and it will deliver returns on the loans taken out to obtain the education. But it's equally important to keep it totally real with students and be fair to them to say, let's look at the full spectrum. If you are, on track for something that is more arts or creative focused, or maybe a trade would suit you better, there's alternatives like an associate's, getting a certification. Even for the software engineer crowd, a lot of big tech companies are issuing the 4-year bachelor's and they're like, get this certificate, or better yet, show us that you can do the skills the job requires and we'll leave you alone. And I think that the only, correct thing to do is to just at least expose students to that spectrum so that way they can make the decision based off of what serves them and sets them up for success versus what's always been traditional.
Gone South has been a podcast about crime in the American South. But for our new season, we're widening the lens. Follow and listen to Gone South Season 5, available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows.
So yeah, that actually brings up a really interesting question for me, because since you're reaching this demographic and you brought up the whole, you might not have to go to college, you could do a trade or what have you. What is the most dangerous myth you've seen high schoolers believe about money?
Oh my gosh. I'm definitely thinking that borrowing is just a way of life, and just thinking like, oh, everyone in my family has always been in debt. So I just know that I have to take out some level of debt. And also getting too comfortable with things like buy now, pay later, just because they weren't educated and because I see the marketing and I see the tactics and how they only ever talk about the upside without tempering that and saying, hey, this is not free money. This is not getting it at a 75, 85% bulk discount. Like we are basically splitting up your payments and we're expecting that you will make them consistently. But it's just, I think, how these companies literally try to paint themselves out to be the heroes that young people need. Like, oh man, your parents are keeping your allowance low, or they're, you're not able to make any real money right now, but you need those shoes or you want that makeup and you get great grades, you deserve it. And so I just think that there's some trickery involved and exploitation, and young people just not realizing that they are being looked at as profit generators as opposed to people coming up with solutions to really give them a leg up and put them at a financial advantage. So yeah, I would say misinformation traps around taking on debt and borrowing are like kind of the big thing that sticks out to me.
Yeah, and real quick to add on to that, it starts young, because I know me with the research and stuff that I've done and the stuff that I've been engrossing myself for years now, I can see when it's a marketing tactic happening. And so like I'll be watching YouTube with my kids and I'm like, oh, that's marketing right there. But they're just looking at it as entertainment. You know what I'm saying? But it's planting that seed in their head. And then later on, I can almost guarantee they're going to ask me, oh, can we buy this? Can we get this? Can we da-da-da? But it's because they saw it in a innocent YouTube video, they think. And, it was just part of the entertainment factor. And then also, you have these microtransactions and stuff going on with the games. So like if any parents are listening, your kid has probably asked you for Robux before or V-Bucks for Fortnite, that type of thing. And is getting these kids into a consumer mindset really, really early. Like I know I've always been a gamer, so I don't have anything wrong with gaming. But I know when I was younger, we couldn't do like these microtransactions where we're just purchasing, outfits and, things like that. And for me, as someone in finance, it's a little scary because they're also not having any delaying of gratification. And that's usually what gets people in trouble as adults, is not being able to delay that gratification. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation as well.
That's the exact premise it's built on, is the instant gratification. You have to have it now. You're going to get left behind. You're missing out. And that FOMO, but on steroids, because, then it's like you're targeting that from a sense of identity, because people and young people especially look at these things as status symbols and like, oh, my friends all have the real. I don't want to be that one that's the lame, that has the knockoff. Our girl, Yanelli, shout out Miss Be Helpful. Like she wrote all about that in Mind Your Money. Just being like at an Ivy League school as a brown girl. And, all the girlies were wearing Uggs and everything costs an arm and a leg. And she's trying to, fit in with the trends and with the styles, but she don't have fit in with trends and style capital at her disposal at that point. So yeah, I feel like the delayed gratification piece is definitely starting to erode with more recent generations. And so that's like a big thing too of what Higher versus Higher is subtly trying to reinforce, saying it without saying it in such a bold way that is off-putting.
Gotcha. And, going back to the debt conversation, because you said that was the biggest myth that you hear or misconception, we often tell our kids, just say no to bad debt, right? But when the system, like you said, is offering loans as the only path to mobility, like this is the only path you can go up, you can get what you need or what have you, how do you teach constraint without killing their hope?
That is a really tough line to cross, but I feel like what has worked so far is giving kids like the almost immersive experience without it actually causing them harm. So we have an opening icebreaker activity we do with all of our Higher versus Higher sessions that we've done in person. It's called 30 Seconds to Build. And it's basically a Jenga activity where kids are given blocks to recreate these different shapes. They have 30 seconds to reproduce them. And they're told that if they successfully do it, in 30 seconds or less, then they will get whatever prize, right? Like $100 gift card. And really, how it goes is that it ends up being kind of a setup. Like, so we intentionally rig the set to where they do not actually get the chance, or like where we reveal to them there's pieces missing, so you could not have won it. But as a good faith measure, of course, we still will come through and give them that prize, because we're like, we're not here to be cruel. We just want you to appreciate what happens when you get hooked into something predatory. And it's because you don't have all the facts and you're just believing blindly what's been told to you by institutions. So it's kind of also encouraging them to be more driven in terms of ask questions and don't be afraid to push back and to self-advocate and be like, this seems really fishy. This deal seems like it's going to put me into financial constraint more than it's going to open up opportunities, and just teaching them how to really use their voice, when they find themselves presented in those situations, and to call out the bad acting, because we also, break down for them what like a quality loan agreement looks like versus one that's subprime or predatory. And, if there's penalties for repaying their debt early, if, they're trying to stretch the terms to over 20, 30 years. Whereas, it should be relatively easy in theory, to pay off debt and to be like, okay, it's a stopgap to get me through this particular crunch. But then on the other side of that, I'm making money, I'm in good standing, and I can cover it and move on, because we're trying to teach them it's not supposed to be a lifelong thing that hangs overhead. So it's like there's no way to really do that without addressing the systemic barriers and just the straight up bad acting that goes on, which at first does make people uncomfortable. But now we've gotten so proficient with our delivery that people are a lot more receptive to that conversation.
Gotcha. And you mentioned systemic barriers. So I want to touch on that a little bit, because how does growing up in a household with scarcity mindset, so like maybe their parents, scarcity all around them or whatever, how does that shape a student's approach to using debt, student loans, credit cards, et cetera, et cetera?
I certainly think it's inherited. I think the conversations, at least that were happening in my household, they did not go deep enough, because I was told outright, don't get a credit card until you have a full-time job. Always spend less than you make, and, make sure to set some aside for savings. But these were just such generic instructions. And this is not me in any way trying to bash family. I'm like, they did the best they could with what they had and what they knew at that time. But it's well intended as those best practices are. Like, they just leave so much else on the table that doesn't go addressed, because I think it's also very contextual and situational. And it's also idyllic. It's like, yes, in theory, you will only ever take out debt just, kind of as like once every so often. But sometimes it's like, this is how people are paying bills and keeping lights on and, keeping from being evicted and put out and, having their basic food and shelter needs met. But then also in terms of the credit card conversation, even though I had been told that many times point blank from kindergarten on up, I still ended up getting hooked, because when I was 19, so I was a freshman in college or sophomore, I was shopping at Gap. And, all those stores like Victoria's Secret, Gap, Macy's, like name it, they all have their own credit card. And they ask, do you want to save 20% with a store card? So just that one change in the phrasing, to me, I was like, oh, so this is like a gift card. So it's like, it puts it on discount. Yeah. Okay, sure. I'll pay $45 instead of $60. So they signed me up. I'm approved. I don't even know I have a credit card in my name until months later. My dad's getting the statements and he's like, why do you have a Gap credit card? And they're saying that your bill is past due. I was like, I didn't know I owed them money. Right. So I feel like just those elusive traps, again, like, as best as parents are trying to do the right thing and have the conversations with their kids, the industry is always scheming. Like, they spend full time, trying to outsmart and outwit and basically hack the system and be like, okay, well, they won't be able to figure this piece out. So I think we have to really come into it almost like with our defenses heightened, instead of just being so trusting and thinking like, oh, it's all designed for our benefit and to set us up, with financial wiggle room. It's like, no, they're seeing us as pawns, right? That they can extract value from. And the less that we know.
Another app for inventory, one for CRM. Oh, don't forget accounting. Wait, which login was that?
Or you could use Odoo, one fully integrated system that does it all without the hassle. Ditch the app overload. Get everything your business needs on one platform. Try Odoo free today at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
So the better for them.
Gotcha. Now, I see the adult version of this, in my counseling clients. They are 35, let's say, but still making decisions based on 15-year-old fears. And so how are you, with your curriculum and everything, getting these students to acknowledge what they're even feeling? Because I think that's a big part of it. A lot of people just don't know what they're feeling and how it's manifesting itself in how they spend their money. So is that something that you go over, and how do you do that with teenagers who are, thinking you're crazy?
Well, this is a newer layer to the work, I will say. So we actually are at the precursor of getting those results. Like as of right now, Higher versus Higher has been around in beta as like a single one-off workshop. So the financial trauma layer that we're adding in for the full-fledged curriculum when it drops this fall, this is going to be a pilot year for us in that way. So, we've started building out the networks in terms of data collection from the teachers and administrators, who will be delivering the material over whatever amount of time. Like in schools, it'll be 7 full months. But then we have partnerships with like certain nonprofits and after school orgs where they only get students a couple of weeks or months out of the year. And so, yeah, that's something that we spent a lot of time developing the training materials for, is just to make sure that those conversations are had with sensitivity and in a way that's non-condemnational, but just more of like planting seeds, because we're, even kind of facilitating conversations in the home by encouraging students to go home and ask their parents certain things. And the details of it are totally theirs to keep private. Like we're not, trying to be invasive and say, now tell us exactly how that went. Like how much fighting, how much pushback did you get? Like it's all for their own benefit and just FYI purposes. So yeah, this coming academic year will be really informational for us in terms of how we keep that approach going moving forward.
Gotcha. All right. So with everything being said, because I know we've covered a lot, I want you to translate this for a parent listening right now. What is one question that they could ask their team tonight, or they should ask their team tonight to get the conversation started?
I would say, as a parent asking a teenager, saying to them, when you think about money and what you've seen me say about it, or how you think I feel about it, do you feel it's had a positive or a negative impact on you and your mindset with money?
Mm-hmm. I like that. That's good. Because a lot of times, and I say that because it serves two purposes, right? One, it's getting how they feel about the situation, but also it can shine the mirror back on us as well. Because, let's say, for instance, they say, well, I've just learned that if I don't have McDonald's money, then we can't go to McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? So then, it can kind of self-reflect and say, well, dang, do I say it that much? Like, do we always never have McDonald's money? Or is that just something that I always say? It just shines the mirror back. So I like that question because to me, it serves two parts. And actually, I just want to put this in there. If you're an adult dealing with the aftermath of these early decisions, I do have some tools and resources available for you in my vault, which is only available if you pre-order my book, Money Moves and Mindset Shifts. I just wanted to plug that because I have a lot of tools in there to kind of go around these things that we're talking about today. So with that being said, let's go ahead and round the corner. I want to know, how can people get this programming in their local high schools, or how would they inquire? Like, let's say if we have teachers or principals or whatever listening, how would they get to inquire about this resource?
Yes, direct email is always best. So B as in boy, F as in Frank, at undebtfeated.com. So that's UNDEBTFEATED. That's my direct email. And then, of course, our website, www.undebtfeated.com, kind of explores more holistically the Higher versus Higher program, but also where it lives within the ecosystem that Undebtfeated has built, because, we see it really as 3 pillars of impact. And this is our intervention arm. So that way, we're able to help high schoolers not make the mistakes that we're helping our grown adults recover from, through the recovery arm. So yes, our website, my email, we have an Instagram presence, although it's just getting up and running, as well as LinkedIn. So those are all resource channels with more context on what we do and how we do it.
Perfect. And I will make sure that I have all that information in the show notes for you all. So that way, if you are interested in what Bree has to offer, or you have some connections or resources to give her to help in her journey, you're right. Because we are not above some help.
Not at all.
Then
not at all.
You can feel free to reach out to her directly. And I'll also have the link to pre-order my book in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Bree, for coming on the podcast today and sharing all of these good nuggets with us.
Yes, thank you for having me, for one, Always great, to see the FinCon community helping each other out and paying off as the years go by. So appreciate the opportunity to be in conversation with you today.
My pleasure. Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.
Understanding power requires more than headlines. I'm Peter Hamby, host of The Powers That Be, a podcast from Puck examining politics, economics, and media to provide context, analysis, and clarity without sensationalism. We ask how power operates, who benefits, and what's at stake. If you want to move beyond breaking news to deeper understanding, join us on The Powers That Be. New episodes every weekday. Follow The Powers That Be wherever you get your podcasts.